The courtroom sat in an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional rustling of papers and hushed whispers among the audience. A heavy air of anticipation settled over the room, thick with the weight of what was to come. Loren Brovarnik sat stiffly, her hands clutched together in her lap, her knuckles pale from the strain. Every muscle in her body felt coiled, wound so tightly she thought she might shatter. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears, drowning out the murmurs around her. Across the room, Alexei Brovarnik sat with his head slightly bowed, a stark contrast to the confident, self-assured man she had once known. His fingers fidgeted restlessly, betraying his unease. Deep shadows framed his weary eyes, evidence of sleepless nights weighed down by the gravity of his actions. His normally sharp features had dulled, marred by regret and exhaustion. A sharp clearing of the judge's throat sliced through the tension like a blade. This court has thoroughly reviewed the evidence and testimony presented regarding the dissolution of marriage between Loren and Alexei Brovarnik. The judge began, her voice unwavering, each word precise and deliberate. Loren braced herself against a wooden table, every fiber of her being taut with expectation. The court finds Mr. Alexei Brovarnik guilty of marital infidelity, financial fraud, and deceitful behavior that has caused irreparable damage to the marriage. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching feverishly across notepads, cameras clicking to capture every defining moment. Loren's breath hitched in her throat. She willed herself to keep her expression neutral, to stay composed, even as her heart pounded with an unfamiliar mix of emotions. This was the moment she had been waiting for, yet it did not bring the satisfaction she had expected. Instead, it left a hollow space where resentment had once festered. The court now grants the dissolution of marriage. The judge continued. This divorce is effective immediately. Loren exhaled sharply. It was over. The weight she had carried for years was finally lifting, unshackling her from the burden of deception. Yet she felt neither sadness nor relief, only a strange, surreal detachment, as if she were observing her life from a distance. But the judge was not finished. Furthermore, due to Mr. Brovarnik's dishonest financial actions, a separate legal case has been opened against him. The judge then turned her gaze to the officers stationed at the back of the courtroom. You may proceed. The sudden movement of two uniformed officers sent another wave of shock through the spectators. As they advanced toward Alexei, the reality of the situation sank in. A hush fell over the room as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Alexei turned toward Loren, his eyes pleading, searching for something. Mercy, forgiveness, understanding. But she gave him nothing. He had already taken too much. "Loren," he murmured, barely audible over the commotion. She did not respond. She merely watched as he was led away, his presence fading into irrelevance. The final stroke of the gavel sealed his fate. Later that evening, Loren stood alone in the remnants of what had once been their shared home. Half-filled moving boxes lay scattered across the floor, like open wounds refusing to heal. The apartment felt cavernous, stripped of the warmth it had once held. The silence was deafening. Her fingertips trailed absently along the spines of books they had once chosen together. Among them, a framed photograph sat undisturbed, frozen in time. She hesitated before picking it up, running her palm over the glass, tracing the familiar curve of Alexei's smile. Had it all been a lie? Had the love they built together ever been real? Or was it merely an illusion that she had clung to for too long? With a steady breath, she turned the frame over, removing the photograph. Her fingers tightened around it before she tore it in half. The sound of paper splitting resonated through the emptiness, an act of finality more resounding than the gavel's strike. A sudden knock at the door startled her. She turned, hesitating before opening it. Sarah stood on the threshold, a bottle of wine in hand. "I figured you might need this," she said, offering a small smile. Loren exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. "Come in." They settled onto the only piece of furniture left untouched by the moving process, the worn-out couch that had witnessed both love and heartbreak. Sarah poured them each a glass, her observant gaze studying Loren's face. "So," Sarah began, taking a sip, "have you cried yet?" Loren let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "No," she admitted. "I think I'm still too angry." Sarah nodded knowingly. "Good. Anger keeps you moving forward." Loren stared down at the swirling liquid in her glass, her mind drifting to the uncertain road ahead. "I don't even know how to start over." "You don't have to," Sarah said gently, her voice steady and reassuring. "You just have to keep going." Loren exhaled slowly as she poured herself a glass of wine, watching the deep red liquid swirl inside the glass. Perhaps Sarah was right. Perhaps all she really needed to do was keep moving forward, to push through step by step until the weight on her chest lessened. Forward motion, that was the key. The visiting room was sterile, cold, and utterly devoid of comfort. The walls were painted an uninspiring shade of gray, and the thick glass partition between her and Alexe was a reminder of the irrevocable distance between them. She hadn't known what to expect when she came here. The man on the other side of the glass wasn't the one she had married. Alexe, one so poised, so particular about his appearance, looked like a shadow of himself. His once impeccable suit was replaced by an orange jumpsuit that drained any authority he once held. His hair was unkempt, black circles hollowed out the skin beneath his eyes, and his hands trembled slightly as he reached for the receiver. Loren hesitated for only a moment before picking up her end of the line. "Loren," he said, his voice raw, stripped of its usual smooth confidence. She inhaled sharply, her grip tightening on the receiver. "Don't." Alexe swallowed, his fingers gripping the phone with white-knuckled intensity. "Please, just let me explain." Loren shook her head, her expression unreadable. "Why?" she asked, her voice steady despite the pain threading through it. "Why did you do this to us?" His breath hitched, and for the first time she saw real fear in his eyes. "I was foolish. I blundered. I convinced myself I could fix everything before you ever found out." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "And if you had, would you have ever told me the truth?" Alexe dropped his gaze, shame creeping into every corner of his face. "I don't know." Loren clenched her jaw, nodding slightly. "At least you're finally honest about something." Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. "I miss you," he murmured at last, his voice nearly breaking. Loren closed her eyes, letting herself feel the weight of those words before she answered. When she finally spoke, it was with quiet certainty. "No, Alexe, you don't miss me. You miss the life you destroyed." His face crumpled, his hands shaking. "Loren, please." But she had already placed the receiver down. She did not look back as she stood, her heels clicking against the cold tile floor.